Zara stepped off the small shuttle, her feet barely touching the rough dirt of Earth's land. The sun was low in the sky, casting a soft orange glow over the empty field. She was alone, far from her homeworld, far from everything she had once known. The shuttle's engines hummed softly as it slowly lifted back into the air and disappeared into the stars. This was not the life Zara had imagined. Her home planet had been beautiful. Cities were alive with bright lights, and its people were known for their advanced technology and wisdom. But all of that was gone now. The war had taken everything from her. The sounds of explosions, the screams of people in pain, and the endless battles haunted her thoughts. The love of her life, Ryler, was lost in that same war. He was gone, just like her planet, erased from existence in the blink of an eye. Zara had come to Earth in search of peace, or at least some form of silence. She did not know what she was looking for, but it wasn't here. The planet was filled with unfamiliar creatures, humans, they called themselves. Strange in their own ways, yet they felt like something she could never understand. She had no family left, no friends. No one who understood what she had lost. She had to leave her people behind, knowing that they too would never fully recover. From the devastation that had crushed them, the small town she arrived in was quiet, much quieter than she had expected. It was surrounded by wide open fields, stretching as far as her eyes could see. Zara had only seen such lands in the ancient books of her people, tales of worlds that had not yet evolved beyond their primitive beginnings. Earth seemed so simple, compared to the cities of her planet, and yet it felt like this place was where she needed to be. Even if she did not understand why, she found a small cabin on the outskirts of town, and it became her temporary home. It was humble, with wood walls that creaked when the wind blew. It had a fireplace that smelled of burning wood, and a bed that felt too soft for someone who had lived through the hardest times. But despite the comforts, Zara felt empty inside. She could not escape the memories of Ryler, of her home, of the people she had failed to save. It had been a long time since she had laughed or even smiled. Grief had wrapped itself tightly around her heart, leaving no room for anything else. Days passed as she tried to adjust to her new life. She visited the small town's market for supplies, but she kept to herself, avoiding the curious glances of the humans who didn't know what to make of an alien in their midst. She was an outsider, a stranger. She didn't belong here, and she didn't feel like trying to fit in. Zara often found herself sitting by the window, staring out at the sunset. The vastness of the sky reminded her of her home planet, of the stars she used to gaze at with Ryler. But now, those stars felt distant, unreachable. The grief weighed heavily on her, and there was no escape. She was alive, but she didn't know how to live. One afternoon, as she walked to the market again, she noticed a man standing by the edge of the road. He was tall, with broad shoulders and rough hands that looked like they belonged to someone who worked with the land. His clothes were simple denim jeans, a worn-out shirt, and a wide-brimmed hat that shaded his face from the sun. His boots were covered in dirt, evidence of the hard work he put into the land. He wasn't looking at her, but Zara could feel his gaze, as if he had noticed her from a distance. It was strange how people on this planet stared at her. They had never seen anyone like her before. Zara's skin was pale, almost translucent, with faint blue veins running under her surface. Her eyes were a deep shade of violet, unlike anything they had ever seen. Her long, silvery hair cascaded down her back, glistening in the sunlight. She was alien to them, and they were alien too. As she walked past the man, he tipped his hat and gave her a polite nod. She didn't acknowledge him, her eyes fixed on the dirt road ahead of her. But as she passed, she heard his voice, low and smooth. "Are you all right, miss?" he asked, his words carried by the wind. Zara stopped, hesitating. She had not expected anyone to speak to her, let alone ask if she was all right. She had grown accustomed to being ignored, to blending in as much as possible with the surroundings. But this man, with his strong presence and his warm voice, had noticed her. She turned her head slightly, just enough to glance at him. "Fine," she replied softly, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. The cowboy didn't seem convinced. He took a step closer, the dust of the road settling around him. His face was weathered, but his eyes were kind, as if he had seen his fair share of hardships too. "You don't look fine to me," he said. "You been coming around here?" "A few days now. Haven't seen you smile once." Zara's heart clenched at the thought. She hadn't smiled in so long. She had almost forgotten what it felt like. The sadness inside her was so deep that it consumed every part of her. She was a widow now, and that grief was her only companion. "I have no reason to smile," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The cowboy nodded slowly, as if he understood more than she expected. He didn't push her to say more. Didn't ask about her past. Instead, he simply stood there, his presence offering a comfort she hadn't realized she needed. "My name's Luke," he said after a moment. "I run a ranch outside town. If you ever need a hand with anything, don't hesitate to ask." Zara looked at him, surprised by his kindness. She had not known many humans, but the ones she had met before had been distant, afraid even. Luke was different. He was open, warm, and unafraid of her. "I'll keep that in mind," she said quietly, before turning away and continuing her walk toward the market. But even as she walked away, she couldn't help but feel that something had shifted in her. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen. And for the first time since arriving on Earth, she felt a small spark of hope. Days passed after that brief encounter with Luke, and Zara found herself thinking about him more often than she expected. His calm demeanor, his kindness, it was so different from the coldness she had grown accustomed to. She was used to being alone too, hiding her pain in the silence of her own thoughts. But something about Luke made her feel like she didn't have to carry that burden alone. The next morning, Zara awoke early. The sunlight peeked through the small window of her cabin, casting long shadows on the floor. She sat up slowly, the weight of another day pressing down on her. It had been weeks since she arrived on Earth, and yet it still felt like she was a stranger in an unfamiliar world. She missed her people, her home, the familiar sounds of her planet, the soft hum of technology, the peaceful glow of the cities. Earth, with its simple, earthy beauty, was so different. She had no idea how to fit into this life. As she prepared for another lonely day, there was a knock at the door. Zara froze. She wasn't used to visitors. She stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. The knock came again, this time a little louder. "Miss Zara, you there?" came a voice familiar and comforting. It was Luke. She sighed, a little nervous. He wasn't used to anyone caring about whether she was there or not. She opened the door slowly, and there he stood. Tipping his hat, "I brought you some eggs and milk from the market," Luke said, holding out a small basket. "Thought you might need a few things." Zara blinked in surprise. No one had ever done something like that for her before. She had managed on her own so far, gathering the bare minimum to survive. But this felt different. Luke's kindness wasn't something she could easily dismiss. "Thank you," she said quietly, accepting the basket. "You didn't have to do this." Luke smiled. "I didn't mind. I've seen you around and I thought you might need a hand." There was an awkward pause between them, and Zara wasn't sure what to say. She hadn't expected him to return, especially after their brief conversation. But Luke wasn't in a hurry. He stood there, his presence comforting, as if he was waiting for her to say something. "Would you like to sit for a moment?" Zara asked, stepping aside to let him in. Luke nodded and walked into the cabin, looking around at the simple wooden walls. The place was humble, just as Zara had found it when she first arrived. There was a fireplace in the corner, a small table. With chairs and a few personal belongings scattered about, Zara had never bothered to decorate or make it feel like home. It was just a place to sleep and escape the memories. "I've never seen a place like this before," Luke said, sitting down on one of the chairs. "It's simple, but peaceful." "Not too many people can say that." Zara sat down across from him, her fingers nervously twisting the edge of her dress. "I've never seen anything like Earth before," she replied softly. "It's ... different, but I think I'm starting to understand it." Luke raised an eyebrow, interested. "Understand it? You mean Earth? She nodded. In some ways, there's a simplicity here that my planet never had. Everything on my world was ... fast. Technology was all around us. We relied on it for everything. But here, it's just people and the land. Luke smiled gently. Yeah, it's not always perfect. But there's something nice about slowing down and appreciating the little things. Like the way the sun sets over the fields, or the quiet moments when you can just breathe. Zara looked out the window, her eyes softening as she took in the view. It was hard to admit, but there was something calming about the openness of Earth. The land felt endless, and the sky stretched wide and free, just like it had on her homeworld. But Earth was different. It didn't have the advanced cities or technology. It didn't have the bustle of 1,000 voices. It was slower, simpler, and more alive in ways she hadn't understood before. I'm not sure how to live here, she admitted, her voice almost a whisper. I came to mourn, to leave behind what I lost. But I don't know how to start again. Luke looked at her, his face thoughtful. Sometimes the first step is the hardest. But living means more than just surviving. It's about finding new reasons to be happy, even if they seem small. Zara looked down at the basket of eggs and milk he had brought. A small part of her wanted to push it away, to refuse his help. She didn't feel like she deserved it, but another part of her, small, almost forgotten part, was beginning to want more than just survival. I don't know how to move on, she said softly. The war ... it took everything. I lost ... so much. Luke's expression softened, his voice steady. I get it. I've lost people too, but there's something here on Earth that can help. Maybe not right away, but little by little, it'll help heal the hurt. You just have to be open to it. She looked up at him, her violet eyes meeting his steady gaze. Open to what? To life, he replied. Not the kind of life you had before, but the kind of life you can have now. You don't have to forget the past, Zara, but you can still live. Sometimes living means letting yourself feel the things that come next. The words hung in the air between them, heavy but full of meaning. Zara felt a flicker in her chest. A spark she hadn't felt in so long. It was the smallest hint of hope. I'll try, she said finally, her voice soft but sincere. Luke stood up, tipping his hat again. I'll check on you later. But remember, if you ever need anything, I'm just down the road. You don't have to be alone in this. As Luke left the cabin, Zara watched him walk away, feeling something inside her shift. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. The first time since she had arrived on Earth, she felt like maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for something more than grief. Something that she could begin to live for. The days grew warmer, and Zara found herself spending more time outside. The small cabin that had once felt like a cage now seemed like a quiet place of refuge. With each passing day, she grew a little more comfortable in her new life. But it was the quiet moments outside that truly allowed her to breathe, to think, and to begin healing. Luke had invited her out on several occasions, offering to teach her things about life on Earth. At first, Zara had hesitated. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, or if she even deserved to feel anything other than sadness. But she had come to realize something she hadn't expected. Luke didn't see her as an alien. He didn't care about her past or the strange world she came from. He simply saw her as a person in need of comfort, someone who deserved to experience the joy of living again. One morning, Luke came by early, just as the sun was rising. He had a gentle knock at the door and a smile on his face, ready to get. Your hands dirty? He asked with a grin. Zara raised an eyebrow, unsure. Get my hands dirty? He chuckled. I'm going to teach you how to work with the animals. The ranch won't run itself. Zara stood still for a moment, the thought of doing physical work strange to her. She was from a planet where work was done mostly by machines, and she had never been much for manual labor. But something inside her stirred. She had always thought that she was too different, too disconnected from the earth around her. Perhaps it was time to change that. I suppose I could try, she replied slowly, her voice hesitant but open. Good, Luke said, smiling wider. Let's go then. They walked across the open fields, the grass brushing against Zara's legs. The land was wide and open, and the sky stretched out forever above them. It felt endless, in a way like the world was giving her a fresh start. Luke led her to the barn, where a group of horses stood. They were beautiful creatures, strong, elegant, and free. Their coats glistened in the morning light, and their eyes were calm. Yet full of energy, Luke introduced her to one of the horses. A large brown mare named Storm. The horse's presence was powerful, yet gentle. Zara hesitated at first, unsure how to approach it, but Luke guided her hand towards Storm's neck. "You have to be calm with them," Luke explained. "They can feel your energy. They'll know if you're scared or if you're unsure." Took a deep breath and slowly ran her fingers along Storm's coat. At first, the horse didn't respond much, but after a moment, it lowered its head slightly, as if acknowledging her. There was something in the way the horse moved, something graceful and trusting that reminded her of the peaceful days she had once known. She smiled softly. "This is different," Zara said, her voice quieter now. "I've never been so close to an animal before." Luke watched her, his expression kind. "Earth has a way of connecting you to things in a way you wouldn't expect. These animals, they live in the moment. They don't carry any of the pain or weight we do. You can learn a lot from them if you're willing to listen." Zara nodded, her hand still gently brushing against the horse's neck. For the first time in a long while, she felt at peace. There was something about being in nature, surrounded by life, that made her feel grounded. It wasn't like the cold cities of her home where everything was artificial. Here, life was raw, real, and full of possibility. Luke guided her through the motions of grooming Storm. He showed her how to brush the horse's coat, how to care for its hooves, and how to feed it. Each step felt like something new for Zara, but she found herself focusing, her mind quieting as she worked. With each brush of the comb, she let go of a little more of the grief she had been carrying. It wasn't a cure, but it was a step. After they finished with the horses, Luke took her to the far side of the ranch, where a few cattle grazed. The land was lush, the grass thick and green, and the cattle moved slowly across the field. The peacefulness of the scene made Zara feel connected to the land in a way she hadn't expected. She had spent so much time looking for distractions, for ways to forget her past. But here, in the simplicity of working with the land, she felt a kind of healing that was beyond her understanding. Luke handed her a bucket of feed and showed her how to distribute it to the cattle. "They're simple creatures," he said. "They eat, they sleep, and they roam. Life's simpler when you don't have to overthink it." Zara chuckled softly, feeling a strange warmth spread through her chest. "I could use a little simplicity," she said. As they worked, Luke talked to her about his own life, about growing up on the ranch, and the lessons he had learned from his father. He spoke of hard times and losses, but also of the beauty in small moments, like watching the sunrise over the fields or hearing the sound of the wind in the trees. It was a life built on simplicity, but also on strength and resilience, you know? "I never thought I'd meet someone from another planet," Luke said after a while, pausing for a moment. "But you're not so different from the people here. You've been through a lot, but you're still standing. You've got strength, Zara. Don't forget that." Zara looked at him, her eyes softening. "I don't know if I have strength left," she admitted quietly. "I don't know if I can keep going after everything that's happened." Luke placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch warm and reassuring. "I know you've been through a lot, but every day you're here, you're moving forward. Strength, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. You don't have to have all the answers right away." For the first time since arriving on Earth, Zara felt a sense of peace she had been missing. The grief still lingered, but it no longer defined her. There was still so much to discover, and maybe, just maybe, she was starting to learn how to live again. As the day came to a close and the sky turned dark, Zara stood beside Luke, looking out over the ranch. The stars were beginning to appear, bright and clear in the sky. It felt like a sign or reminder that, even in the darkest of times, there was always a new day ahead. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice full of gratitude. "For everything." Luke nodded, his expression sincere. "You don't have to thank me. I'm just showing you what I've learned. Oh, you'll find your way, Zara. I believe that. The two of them stood there for a while, watching the stars and the land. It was the beginning of something new for Zara, life she never thought she could have. But with each day, she was learning to live again, one small step at a time. Zara woke the next morning with a strange feeling in her chest. It was not the familiar heaviness of grief that had weighed her down for so long. No, this feeling was different. It was a sense of possibility, a quiet stirring deep within her, that she hadn't felt in years. It was a feeling that perhaps, just perhaps, she could still find joy in life. The sun was shining brightly through the window as she stood up and stretched. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel the need to retreat into the shadows. She had spent the past few weeks working on Luke's ranch, learning about the land and animals, slowly finding peace in the simplicity of life. But there was something else now, a desire to do more. To take another step forward, she dressed quickly, feeling the soft fabric of her simple clothes against her skin. As she made her way outside, she found the morning air fresh and cool, a welcome change from the oppressive heat of the days before. The ranch stretched out before her, the fields empty but full of potential. She had come to care for this place, the wide open spaces, the animals, the land. It wasn't her homeworld, but it had become a new kind of home. Zara walked toward the barn, her thoughts drifting. She had not seen Luke since yesterday. He had mentioned that he would be working on the far side of the ranch today, checking on the crops and tending to the fences. She wondered if he would be too busy for her to join him. But she was determined to try. When she reached the barn, she found Luke finishing up with one of the horses, brushing its coat with practiced care. He looked up as he heard her approach, his face breaking into a warm smile. "Morning," he greeted her, his voice easy and steady. "Good morning," Zara replied, her tone softer than usual. She felt a sense of nervous excitement building within her. Today she wanted to do something more than just help with the chores. She wanted to be more than a stranger to the land, more than someone passing through. She wanted to learn, to grow, and maybe even to teach herself how to truly live again. "I was thinking," she started, her words hesitant but gaining strength. "Maybe I could help with the crops today? I've been learning about the animals, but I'd like to try something new. Something more." Luke paused, looking at her for a moment as if considering her request. Then he nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "I think that sounds like a good idea. There's plenty to do out there, and you've been working hard with the animals. I think you're ready." Zara felt a surge of gratitude. She had no idea what she was doing, but Luke had always encouraged her to try. And now, with his support, she felt like she could take on whatever challenge lay ahead. "Let's get started then," Luke said, leading her outside to the fields. The land before her seemed endless, rows of crops stretching out in neat lines, green and lush under the sun. Luke handed her a small rake and began to show her how to gather the weeds from between the crops, pulling gently to avoid damaging the plants. "This is the trick," Luke explained as he worked beside her. "You've got to be gentle. Crops need care, just like everything else on this ranch. Take your time. The land's not going anywhere." Zara followed his instructions, feeling the rhythmic motion of pulling the weeds. It was surprisingly satisfying, a simple task that allowed her mind to focus on the present. She had been so caught up in the past, in the pain of what she had lost, that she had forgotten how to be in the moment. But now, as she worked alongside Luke, she felt the weight of the past beginning to lift, just a little. As the morning passed, Zara began to enjoy the work. It wasn't about forgetting her past. It was about learning to live with it, to build something new with the life she had now. The crops, the animals, the land, these things didn't ask anything of her except care. Didn't care about her history, her pain. They simply thrived in the present. Luke watched her work with a quiet approval. He didn't say much, but he didn't need to. Zara could feel the change in herself, the small shifts that meant she was learning, growing, and healing. After a few hours, Luke stood up and wiped his brow, glancing at the sun. "We're about done for the morning. You're doing great," he said, his voice kind. "How about we take a break and head down to the creek? I know a spot where we can cool off." Zara nodded, grateful for the suggestion. The day was growing warmer, and she was beginning to feel the burn of the sun on her skin. The creek sounded like the perfect place to rest and gather her thoughts. They walked in silence toward the creek, the cool shade of the trees offering relief from the heat. The sound of running water filled the air, soothing and calm. The creek was a peaceful place, its waters clear and cool, flowing gently over smooth stones. Zara knelt by the water's edge, dipping her hands into the cool stream. The sensation was refreshing, and for the first time in weeks, she felt truly relaxed. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sound of the water wash over her. "You know," Luke said after a while, "sometimes we get so caught up in what's happened that we forget there's still life to live. We don't have to forget the past, but we can't live in it either." Zara opened her eyes and looked at him. His words felt like a gentle reminder, something she had needed to hear. "I know," she said softly. "I've been holding on to it for so long, it's hard to let go." Luke nodded, his expression serious but kind. "You don't have to let it all go at once. Just take it one step at a time. And remember, you don't have to be alone in it." Dora looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. He had become more than a stranger to her. He had become someone she could rely on, someone who believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. "I'm trying," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm trying to live again, I think. I think I'm starting to understand what that means." Luke smiled, a small but genuine smile. "You're getting there. Just don't rush it. Life doesn't work like that." Zara nodded, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She didn't have all the answers, but for the first time, she felt like she was on the right path. And with Luke by her side, she knew she wasn't walking it alone. As the day ended and the sky turned to gold, Zara and Luke made their way back to the ranch. The land around them felt like home now, the connection between them growing stronger. With each passing day, Zara knew that her journey was far from over, but for the first time, she felt like it was a journey worth taking. The days on the ranch had become a routine for Zara. The work was hard, but it gave her something to focus on. She woke each morning to the sound of birds singing outside her cabin. And as she worked alongside Luke, she felt a growing sense of purpose. Her grief, though never fully gone, was no longer the heavy, suffocating presence it once had been. Slowly, she was learning to live again. One morning, after a long day of working the fields, Luke invited Zara to join him for a ride. He had noticed how she seemed to enjoy the time spent with the animals, and he thought a ride through the ranch would help her unwind. "You've done well today," Luke said as he handed her the reins to a horse. "Let's take a break and enjoy the land. It's a good way to clear your head." Zara looked at the horse, a sleek black mare named Shadow. She had ridden before, back on her homeworld, but that had been with machines and advanced equipment. This was different. This was Earth. She had never ridden a horse like this before. The thought made her nervous, but there was something about it that felt right. She wanted to experience it. "I'll try," she said, her voice steady, though her heart was racing with anticipation. Luke smiled. "That's all I'm asking for. Just try." She mounted the horse with Luke's help, feeling the weight of the saddle and the strength of the animal beneath her. As they began to ride, Zara felt the wind on her face, cool and refreshing. The land stretched out before them, wide and open, with fields of grass swaying in the breeze. The ranch looked different from the back of the horse. It felt more alive, more real. The earth beneath her felt solid, and for the first time, Zara truly felt grounded. They rode together in silence, the sound of hooves against the earth filling the air. The world around them was quiet, peaceful. Zara's mind wandered as they moved through the open fields, her thoughts drifting to her past. She had come to Earth to escape her memories, to mourn what she had lost. But now, she found herself thinking of the future as well. For the first time, she wasn't just thinking about surviving. She was thinking about living. Luke kept a steady pace, guiding the horses through the winding trails. They stopped for a while near a small stream, the water sparkling in the sunlight. Zara dismounted and walked to the water's edge, her fingers grazing the cool surface. She had never felt so connected to the land before. And there was something peaceful about the stillness of the creek. "Do you ever miss your old life?" Zara asked quietly, looking at Luke. She wasn't sure why she had asked the question, but it had been on her mind for some time now. Luke looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "I do, sometimes," he said, his voice steady but filled with a touch of sadness. "But life moves on, whether you want it to or not. We all have. To find our way through it, one way or another." Zara nodded, understanding more than she let on. She had been through so much, losing her world, her people, and the one she loved. She didn't know how to move forward, didn't know how to embrace life again. But Luke's words reminded her that she didn't have to have all the answers right away. She just had to keep moving forward, even if the steps were small. "What if I don't know how to move on?" Zara asked, her voice trembling slightly. "What if I never learn how to live again?" Luke walked over to her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're already moving on, Zara," he said softly. "Every day you're here, you're living. It might not feel like it, but you are. You're learning to live with the past. And that's the hardest part. Don't be so hard on yourself." His words were like a balm to her wounded heart. Zara had spent so much time thinking she couldn't live without her past, without Ryler. But Luke was right. She was already moving forward, even if it was in ways she couldn't see. Maybe she didn't need to have it all figured out. Maybe the key was to simply keep trying, to keep living. "I don't know if I'll ever feel like myself again," she said quietly, staring at the water. "But I think I'm starting to understand that it's okay not to be the same person I was before." Luke nodded, his eyes kind and understanding. "You don't have to be. You're not the same person you were, and that's okay. Life changes you, and the best you can do is keep going, no matter what." Zara looked up at him, a small smile tugging at her lips. For the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of hope. She had come to Earth to escape her pain, too, mourn what she had lost. But now, she was starting to see that there was more to life than just surviving. There was still so much beauty in the world, so much left to discover. After a long pause, Zara took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. "I think I can do this," she said softly, as much to herself as to Luke. Luke smiled. Back at her, his expression warm. "I knew you could." The rest of the day passed in a quiet, peaceful rhythm. They rode back to the ranch, the sun beginning to set behind the mountains. The land seemed to glow with the fading light, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink. Zara felt a deep sense of contentment settle in her chest. She had come to Earth looking for peace, and though it hadn't come easily, she was starting to find it. When they reached the ranch, Zara dismounted and thanked Luke for the ride. "I don't think I've ever felt so free," she said, her voice full of wonder. Luke nodded, his eyes warm. Sometimes freedom is just a ride away. As she walked back to her cabin, Zara felt a sense of peace that she hadn't known in years. The past was still there, lingering in her memories, but it no longer had a hold on her. She was learning to let it go, to live in the present. There was still much to do, much to learn, but Zara knew that with each passing day, she was moving closer to the life she had been searching for. She had come to Earth to mourn, but now she was beginning to understand that there was still so much life left to live. The days had become warmer, and so had Zara's heart. The grief that had followed her from her home planet had not disappeared, but it had softened, giving way to the quiet healing that the land and Luke had brought her. It had been months since she had arrived on Earth, seeking nothing but silence and solitude. Now she was beginning to feel more like herself again slowly, and with each new day, Zara spent her mornings tending to the animals, cleaning the barn, and helping Luke with whatever needed to be done around the ranch. The work felt grounding, and though it was hard, it also brought a sense of accomplishment. She didn't mind getting her hands dirty anymore. Every task, whether feeding the cattle or fixing the fence, felt like a small victory. She was no longer just surviving. She was learning to live. One afternoon, Luke asked her to help with a more difficult task. A storm was expected to roll in, and they needed to make sure the animals were safely secured in the barn before the rain came. "We're going to need to move the cattle into the barn," Luke said, as he walked toward Zara with a rope in his hand. "The storm's coming in faster than I thought. It'll be dangerous for them out in the field." Zara nodded, already feeling the weight of the task. Now the cattle were wild and strong, and moving them into the barn would take patience and skill. But she had learned a lot from Luke over the past few months. She had learned how to be patient with the animals, how to listen to them. And she knew that if she stayed calm, they would follow her lead. They walked together toward the field where the cattle grazed. The sky had darkened, and a chill wind was beginning to pick up. Zara could feel the change in the air. The storm was near. Luke turned to her, his face serious. "You know how to do this now? Just stay calm and keep your voice steady. The cattle will follow." Zara took a deep breath, nodding. She was nervous, but she had to trust herself. Over the past months, she had learned that she didn't need to be afraid of what she didn't know. She could handle this. Together, they approached the herd. The cattle raised their heads as they noticed them, their eyes alert. Moved slowly, gently guiding the animals toward the barn. The cows were hesitant at first, but Zara spoke softly to them, her voice low and soothing. She had learned that animals, like people, needed kindness and understanding. The storm clouds were gathering faster now, the wind picking up, but Zara kept her focus. She could feel the storm inside her, to the storm of emotions that had once raged within her. But now, they no longer controlled her. She had learned how to be calm in the face of it all. The cattle were moving toward the barn, slowly but surely. Luke kept pace beside her, his eyes watching her every move. He didn't need to say anything. Zara could feel his approval. She was doing it. She was living. As the last of the cattle made its way into the barn, the first few drops of rain began to fall. Zara stepped back, looking at the barn, her heart swelling with pride. She had done it. And the storm outside was nothing compared to the one she had conquered within herself. "That was impressive," Luke said, his voice full of admiration as he closed the barn doors. "You handled that like a pro." Zara looked at him, her face flushed with a mix of exhaustion and accomplishment. "I never thought I could do something like that," she admitted. "But I guess ... I'm starting to believe I can." Luke smiled. "You've always had it in you, Zara. You just needed to see it for yourself." The rain began to pour, loud and steady against the barn's roof. Inside, the animals were safe, and the storm outside didn't seem so frightening anymore. Zara felt a wave of calm wash over her, a deep sense of peace that she had been searching for since the moment she had arrived on Earth. As they walked back to the house, Luke turned to her. "I know you've been through a lot," he said, his voice softer now. "But you're not alone. You've got a place here. And you've got me." Zara looked at him, her heart beating a little faster. She had never expected to find someone like Luke, someone who cared about her not because of her past, but because of who she was now. The loneliness she had carried with her for so long was starting to fade, replaced by something new: connection. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice filled with sincerity, "for everything." Luke gave her a simple nod, his eyes warm. "You don't have to thank me. Just keep being you. That's enough." As they reached the house, Zara stopped for a moment, looking out at the storm. The wind howled through the trees and the rain poured down in sheets, but Zara didn't feel afraid. The storm was just a part of the world, just as her grief had. But it wasn't something that would last forever, and neither would her pain. In that moment, Zara realized that she had come a long way. She had arrived on Earth broken, lost, unsure of what her future would be. But now, she was learning to embrace it. She was learning to live again, one step at a time, with the quiet support of the land and the people around her. Luke had been right. She didn't need to forget her past. She didn't need to erase the memories of her homeworld of Ryler, but she could live alongside them. And in time, they wouldn't hurt so much. She had found a place for herself here on Earth, and, more importantly, she had found a way to start again. The storm outside was just another part of life. But with each day, Zara was learning to face it with courage, to ride through it. Just as she had ridden across the fields, as the storm raged on outside, Zara sat in front of the fire, the warmth of the flames wrapping around her like a comforting embrace. She looked at Luke, and for the first time in a long while, she felt the stirrings of something she thought she had lost forever: hope.